Popular rapper arrested. He's accused of shooting a security guard at a South Florida gentleman's club and will remain behind bars. A judge denied bond for 21-year-old Williams, known as Pooh Shiesty. Police say he was performing at King of Diamonds in Miami over Memorial Day weekend.
Just stepped out after 5 long years locked up, and somehow he is still tied to Gucci Mane's label deal. The man lost half a decade behind federal walls. No movement, no spotlight, nothing. Back in 2021, everything in music flipped upside down. New faces took over, trends changed overnight, and streaming kept running like he never existed. While he was gone, hits were made without him, big features passed him by, and the industry kept spinning fast. That is 5 years of lost buzz, 5 years of missed checks, 5 years that you can never get back. And now here we are in April 2026. Kwame Khalil Brown, known as Foogiano, walks out and lands right back into the same contract he signed in March 2020 like nothing ever changed. That is not just bad timing, that is something deeper. That is how these label deals are built from the ground up to protect the label at all costs. Artists can be sharp, connected, and still get locked into deals that last longer than their freedom, their hype, and sometimes even their whole run in the game. Gucci Mane handed Foogiano $1 million deal, and on paper that sounds huge, like a life-changing moment. But in reality, that number comes with pressure and hidden rules. That million is not just free money. It comes with conditions, expectations, and payback attached. Every dollar has to be earned back before Foogiano even sees real profit, and that is where things get serious fast. That $1 million is not just a check, it is a trade-off. It gives Gucci Mane control over your music, your name, your brand, even your exit. And that control does not pause for anything. It does not matter if you are in the studio grinding or sitting inside a federal facility in Tennessee, the contract keeps running like a clock you cannot stop. Right now, Foogiano is basically the last one left standing at 1,017 records, and that says a lot. Pooh Shiesty is locked up facing life after allegedly trying to rob Gucci Mane at gunpoint in a Dallas studio just to break free from his deal. Big Scar is gone, Enchanting is gone, Hot Boy West is serving 15 years, and every other artist from the 1017 roster was officially released in October 2024, except for 2 names, Patti and Foogiano. Now one of them is dealing with serious federal charges, and the other just walked out of prison straight back into paperwork he signed years ago. Take a second and really look at that picture. While everyone was caught up in headlines and street drama, Gucci Mane was moving in a different way. Quiet, calculated, and completely legal. Moves were being made behind the scenes that most people did not even notice until it was already done. Now let's get into Foogiano himself. Born Kwame Khalil Brown on July 4, 1993, he is not from Atlanta or Memphis or any major hotspot. He comes from Greensboro, Georgia, a small town in Greene County, where chances are limited and getting out is not easy at all. Growing up, he listened to the usual heavy hitters from that region, T.I., Lil Wayne, and even Gucci Mane, the same person who would later become his label boss. He was raised with his mother, 3 brothers, and a sister, and life was not smooth. By his teenage years, he was already going in and out of juvenile detention centers, setting a path that would later shape everything that came next. By 2013, things took a serious turn. Foogiano got hit with burglary and robbery charges and ended up serving 3 years behind bars. He did his time, came home, and tried to shift his focus into music, but that past did not just disappear. It shaped everything about how his future played out. That history matters more than people realize. When Foogiano eventually signed to 1017, he was not coming in with leverage or big choices. He was not sitting at the table with multiple offers trying to spark a bidding war. He was a young artist from a small town carrying a record, looking for a real shot. And the same rapper he grew up listening to, Gucci Mane, was now the one offering him a deal. That kind of setup creates a power gap from day one, before any contract was even signed. By 2019, Foogiano started getting real attention at the street level. His music was spreading through word of mouth, building momentum the organic way. Then Molly started catching serious traction, turning heads fast. By 2020, it got a remix featuring Deba, who was one of the hottest names in the game at that moment. That remix pulled in around 5 million global streams, and the video was stacking over 1 million views every single week. There was no denying it. Fugio was rising fast. Big names in the industry started paying attention, including Atlantic Records, one of the biggest players out there. But Fugio made it clear in an early interview. "I walked out the door at Atlantic and WAP called whenever he talks, I'm all ears. He got through struggle to get here." That moment says everything about how personal loyalty and influence can outweigh business decisions in this game. I've learned so much from him. That line alone says everything. This deal was never built on hard negotiation or strong leverage. It came from admiration, from looking up to someone, from feeling like if Gucci Mane believed in you, then you really made it. And coming out of Greensboro, Georgia, with limited opportunities and a record already attached to your name, that kind of call hits different. When Gucci Mane reaches out right after a meeting with Atlantic Records, it does not just feel like business, it feels bigger than that. It feels like validation on a whole other level, like everything you worked for just got stamped in one moment. Then March 2020 hits and Fugio signs to 1017 Records for $1 million.
Foogiano, the Atlanta-based rapper whose real name is Kwame Brown, is represented by Gucci Mane. Take a look. This is a booking photo just in. U.S. Marshals now say they tracked down the 27-year-old in Memphis last week. They tell us they had been trying to find him for 3 months after he apparently melted off his court-ordered ankle monitor, and they tried to track him down there.
That is when the timer officially starts ticking. But that $1 million people keep talking about is not what it looks like at first glance. And that is where a lot of confusion comes in. In the music world, that money is called an advance, and it is far from a gift. It is a loan, and not just any loan, a recoupable one. That means before Fugio earns a single dollar from streams, album sales, or anything tied to the label, that full amount has to be paid back first. The label gets its money before the artist even starts to see real profit, and that is where things tighten up. And it does not stop there either. Deals like this, especially ones that look like what 1017 runs, are often structured as 360 deals. That means the label is not just earning from the music. They take a cut from touring, merch, brand deals, YouTube revenue, all of it. Sync deals, licensing, brand partnerships, everything gets included. The label is not just tied to your music. They are tied to your whole career. Every move you make, every dollar that comes in, they have a piece of it. Now look at how that plays out in real life. Fugio signs for $1 million, but that money does not just sit in his pocket. It gets spread across recording costs, marketing pushes, music videos, promo runs, and distribution. It is being spent before he even has a chance to earn. Every dollar used to promote Gutta Baby, every dollar behind the Deba remix video, every push from Atlantic Records and 1017 to build his name, all of that stacks up. And none of it is free. It all gets added on top of that advance. And it all has to be paid back first. That means it comes straight out of Fugio's share before he sees any real money. His debut album, Gutta Baby, dropped in November 2020 and made noise right away. It hit the top of Billboard's Heat Seekers albums chart, which is a real milestone. But that chart tracks newer artists without major commercial history. So while it looked strong, the numbers were not enough to seriously cut into $1 million advance plus all those extra costs. He was just getting started, building momentum step by step. Then December 2020 came in and everything shifted fast. Just weeks after dropping his debut, Fugio was stopped by police in Georgia. Reports said officers found a firearm and cash in his possession, and at that time, he was already on probation from earlier charges, which made the situation even more serious. For someone already on probation, catching a new gun charge is not just another case. It can shut everything down completely. This was not a small issue. This was the kind of situation that can end a career before it even really begins. Fugio was arrested, charged as a convicted felon in possession of a firearm, and later released on a $50,000 bond with strict rules attached. Those conditions were clear: wear an ankle monitor and stay inside the state of Georgia. No room for mistakes, no second chances built into that setup. But then things took a sharp turn when he burned the ankle monitor off. A lot of people look at that move and call it reckless or panicked, and maybe some of that is true. But it also reflects someone who had been dealing with the system since his teenage years, someone who had just started seeing real success, and suddenly felt everything slipping away again. That kind of pressure can cloud judgment fast. Still, the decision had serious consequences. He ran, stayed on the move for 3 months, trying to avoid what was closing in on him. But in March 2021, federal agents tracked him down in Memphis, Tennessee, and that run came to an end. In May 2021, everything locked in. Foogiano was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison, a full 5 years just like that, and all of it came from cutting off that ankle monitor and going on the run. At the time, his label president, Lavo Sanders, known as Bowman, went public on social media saying Foogiano was innocent. He claimed the gun charge belonged to someone else and that Greene County handed down an unfair sentence. That narrative spread fast, but in the end, the courts did not see it that way at all. The sentence stood 5 years, no changes. But here's the part that most people completely overlooked back then. What happened to the contract during all of this? Nothing changed. The deal did not pause, it did not freeze, and it definitely did not disappear. Gucci Mane did not release Foogiano, and the paperwork stayed active the entire time. Every song Foogiano had already recorded still belonged to the label, and that advance he received was still sitting there waiting to be paid back. That is how these contracts are built. A criminal case does not cancel anything. It does not give the artist an exit, and it does not force the label to let them go. The deal stays alive no matter what, and walking away is not simple. It usually means owing everything back, and that can get heavy fast. Foogiano went to prison, but the contract never moved. It stayed active on paper the whole time, and Gucci Mane still held the rights to everything tied to his name. While he was locked away, the years from 2021 to 2026 turned into one of the most chaotic periods 1017 Records has ever seen. Pooh Shiesty, the label's biggest star at the time, the voice behind Back in Blood, which hit number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100 and went 5 times platinum, got arrested in June 2021 after a strip club shooting. That situation only got deeper when he was later tied to a 2020 shooting in Bay Harbor Islands, Florida. By January 2022, he pled guilty to federal conspiracy charges and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Just like that, one of the label's biggest moneymakers was off the board. Then things took an even darker turn. Big Scar, one of the most promising artists on the roster, passed away in December 2022 at just 22 years old due to a drug overdose. That loss hit hard, not just emotionally for those close to him, but also for the label that was counting on his rise. Not long after, Enchanting 1017's breakout female artist also passed away in early 2023 from a drug overdose at 26. Back-to-back losses like that shook everything around the label, and it did not stop there. Hot Boy Wes, who joined 1017 in July 2021, was later sentenced to 15 years in prison after serious assault charges involving the mothers of his children. One situation after another kept stacking up, and the label's roster started to look completely different in a short amount of time. The roster Gucci Mane built in 2020 with so much hype did not last the way people expected. It started falling apart piece by piece. Artists passed away, others went to prison, some lost momentum, and by October 2024, everything reached a breaking point. Gucci Mane went on camera, sitting in his car, talking calm like he was reading off a business memo, and made a major announcement. He said he was releasing almost every artist from his roster, not some of them, almost all of them. His exact words were, "I'm looking at my profit and loss statement and me being a businessman. I think that I'm going to have to release almost all of my artists except for T.I. and FUO. This is a decision I didn't want to make. I thought about it. I could keep all of them under the contract, but I said, hey, fuck it. Let's just make the unselfish decision and let them take their talents elsewhere." Now pay attention to how that was framed. He called it an unselfish decision, like he was doing something generous for those artists. He made it sound like he was giving them freedom out of kindness, but the business side tells a different story. Look at who stayed. He kept the 2 artists with the strongest commercial results, the ones still tied into deals, still generating value, still bringing in numbers. T.I. had a 5 times platinum record, and Foogiano had a gold record with Molly. The rest of the roster did not hit those same levels commercially, and that matters in this game. This was not about generosity, it was about numbers, profit, and long-term value. A straight business move, dressed up to look like a favor. The artists bringing in real numbers stayed, and the ones who were not were let go. Not because of generosity, but because keeping them around was no longer making money. That is the reality behind it, and here is the part that really stands out. Both artists he kept were in prison at the time. Think about that for a second. During the October 2024 announcement, Gucci Mane's entire active roster came down to 2 names, and both of them were behind bars. Pooh Shiesty was still serving his 5-year sentence, and Foogiano was doing the same. Neither of them had the freedom to move how they wanted. They could not easily negotiate, speak out publicly, or quickly line up legal help to challenge anything. They were locked in, both physically and contractually. And while they were sitting there, the deal stayed fully active. Gucci Mane kept control over their masters, their future music, and their overall brand without needing to make any immediate moves for them while they served time. That kind of setup is not random. That is leverage built into the system. It shows how these deals can stretch across years, no matter what is happening in an artist's life. But before going deeper into Foogiano's situation, there is another key moment that needs attention. What happened with T.I. in early 2020 shows just how tight these 1017 deals can feel and how far things can go when an artist starts feeling stuck inside that kind of contract. Pooh was released from prison in October 2025 after serving over 3 years of his 5-year sentence. And almost immediately, he reminded everyone who he was. Within weeks, he dropped FDO, and it shot straight to the top of Billboard's Hot R&B Hip-Hop Songs chart and the Hot Rap Songs chart. That kind of comeback made one thing clear: he was still a hitmaker. The audience was still there, the demand was still there, and he had everything lined up to rebuild at a high level. But despite all that momentum, one thing had not changed at all. He was still locked into his 1017 deal. Prosecutors later claimed that he was extremely unhappy with the terms of that contract. At some point in late 2025 or early 2026, he reportedly went directly to Gucci Mane and asked to be released from the deal. According to federal prosecutors, the answer he got was no. What happened after that depends on how you look at it. Some see it as desperation under pressure. Others see it as reckless decisions, and the courts will ultimately sort that out. But here is what has been alleged. On January 10th, 2026, Pooh Shiesty reportedly set up what was supposed to be a business meeting at a recording studio in Dallas, Texas. Gucci Mane, along with 2 associates described as music industry professionals, traveled out there expecting a normal meeting, not knowing what was about to unfold next. They walked into that studio thinking it was just another business meeting. But according to prosecutors, everything flipped the moment they stepped inside. 9 men were allegedly involved, including Pooh Shiesty, his father William Sr., and rapper Big 30, and what followed was described as a coordinated armed takeover. Prosecutors claim Shiesty pulled out an AK-style pistol, and the situation escalated fast. One person was reportedly choked until they were nearly unconscious. The studio door was blocked so no one could leave, turning the whole place into a locked situation. Then it got even more serious. The victims were allegedly robbed of Rolex watches, jewelry, cash, and personal belongings, and a wedding ring. And at the center of it all, Gucci Mane was reportedly forced at gunpoint to sign documents releasing Shiesty from his contract. One of the people involved is said to have filmed the entire signing on a phone, adding another layer to the case. All 9 individuals were hit with federal charges, including conspiracy to commit kidnapping, which carries the possibility of a life sentence. Shiesty was denied bond, and the judge made it clear during the hearing. The court stated there was probable cause to believe he committed the violations listed in the complaint based on the evidence presented. At the same time, the defense is pushing back hard. His attorney, Bradford Cohen, has challenged the case, pointing out that federal charges took 3 months to appear. He also argued that the alleged contract has not been produced. There is no confirmed video of the signing, and that investigators had not directly interviewed the alleged victims before filing the complaint. Now everything sits in a tense position, with serious claims on one side and strong pushback on the other, and the final outcome still waiting to be decided. He called those early witness statements very questionable, and from a legal standpoint, those are real arguments that will play out in court. The case is still unfolding, and the final outcome is not set yet, but here is what stands out no matter how it ends. The situation itself says a lot about how these contracts operate behind the scenes. When things reach this level, it shows how intense the pressure can get when someone feels stuck with no clear way out. According to the allegations, this was not a small reaction. This was a situation where multiple people were brought from Memphis to Dallas, all tied to what prosecutors described as a planned studio incident. Whether every detail gets proven or challenged in court, the bigger picture is hard to ignore. At the center of it all is this idea that leaving the deal was not simple, that there were serious barriers, both legal and financial, keeping everything locked in place. That kind of structure can create major conflict, and this situation became an extreme example of that tension. That is the real conversation here. Not just what happened in one moment, but what led up to it and how these agreements can hold power over an artist's career for years. Then Gucci Mane added another layer to it. Just 10 days after the arrest made headlines, he dropped a diss track called Crash Dummy, produced by Zaytoven. And one line had everyone talking: "Tell the truth. You went out like a real crash dummy, and after all that, boy, you still signed to me." That line hit hard because of what it implied. Even after everything that was being reported, the message was clear. From Gucci Mane's perspective, the contract was still active, still his, and nothing that happened changed that. He made that point publicly, on a track for the whole world to hear. No matter what unfolded in that Dallas situation, the deal was still standing, and he was not letting anyone forget it. He even brought up Suge Knight and those well-known stories about how Dr. Dre got out of his situation with Ruthless Records. The comparison was loud and clear. Gucci Mane was sending a message that, unlike what people say happened back then, he was not backing down this time. He made it obvious. He was keeping that deal, keeping the masters, and holding on to every bit of leverage tied to it. No confusion, no mixed signals, just a firm stance that nothing was slipping out of his control. Then April 21st, 2026 hits, just 2 weeks after Shotti's federal arrest, when the entire industry was locked in on that situation. Right in the middle of all that noise, Foogiano walks out of prison. A photo shared by No Jumper showed him smiling, grills shining, looking relieved to finally be free. The energy around that moment was instant. Producer Spiff made it, posted a selfie with him on Instagram stories saying, "No more free food." His personal photographer followed up with, "Stay free, welcome home." Fans wasted no time jumping in. The comments flooded fast. "Need some music, ASAP." 4 years later, and he's back. People were excited, watching closely, waiting to see what version of Foogiano was about to return. But while all that hype was building, there was one question that barely got asked. Under all that excitement and noise, the real issue was still sitting there. What exactly is he coming home to now? He comes home and nothing about the deal has changed. Still signed to 1017, still tied to the same contract he left behind. And now he is basically the last artist standing on a label where the other main name is sitting in a Texas federal jail facing life in prison. At the same time, the music world kept moving without him for 5 full years. Trends changed, new stars took over, and his spot did not just sit there waiting. He steps back in with that same advance from 2020 still needing to be paid back before he can see real royalties. And that deal? It was written in a room where he did not have the power to shape the outcome. It was with a label run by someone he looked up to for years, and that contract has stayed untouched, unbroken, and fully active this entire time. 5 years went by with no new commercial releases tied to him. No fresh drops, no features, nothing hitting the market. Let that really sink in. Zero output during that stretch. But the contract does not forget. It still expects music, still expects full album cycles, still expects delivery. So now the timeline picks back up from wherever things stopped back in December 2020, when everything paused on the surface, but not on paper. And that is where this situation starts to get even more serious. Gucci Mane made it sound simple back in October 2024, when he explained why he kept Foogiano. He pointed to the numbers, the gold single, the chart performance of his debut album, and the value he believed Foogiano still had as an artist. On the surface, it sounded like a straightforward business decision. But what he did not say tells a whole different story. Foogiano was sitting in federal prison at the time with no real leverage, no active team pushing for him, no competing offers, and no way to speak out publicly or challenge anything in real time. That is not a balanced situation at all. Holding on to an artist in that position cost the label almost nothing. There are no studio sessions being paid for, no videos getting shot, no promo runs being funded. The contract just sits there, locked in place, waiting. And when the artist comes home, the label is first in line for everything they create next. That is where it gets strategic. Gucci Mane did not just sign a deal years ago. He secured rights to Fugio's future, the comeback story, the redemption run, the chapter that fans are now watching closely. And that move was made years earlier, with money that ultimately has to be earned back from Fugio's own success. That is the real play behind it. And this kind of situation is not new when it comes to 1017 records. Over time, there has been a clear pattern showing the difference between what artists believe they are signing up for and what the contracts actually lock in. Take Asian Doll, for example. She was the first female artist signed to 1017, and she stepped in after feeling what she described as family vibes from Gucci Mane and his wife Keshia Kaware. That kind of energy can make everything feel right in the moment, but the paperwork always tells the full story later. 2 years later, everything shifted. In January 2020, Asian Doll went public saying she had asked Gucci Mane to release her from the label, and according to her, he agreed. She came out saying she was officially independent, free to move on her own. But what she did not break down was everything it took to get there. The behind-the-scenes talks, the legal steps, the possible costs, none of that was explained. Walking away is never just a simple decision, and in the process, she left behind the momentum she had built under 1017. That buzz she once had started to slow down. It did not fully convert into the kind of commercial success that gives an artist strong negotiating power. And without that leverage, things can change fast in this industry. The same pattern showed up with other artists too. Lil Quill and Young Mal, both Atlanta artists who had real local energy when they signed, slowly disappeared from the roster with barely any formal announcement. One day they were there, the next day gone. That is how it works when the numbers drop. If the revenue is not coming in, labels are not fighting to hold on. But when an artist is bringing in money, everything flips. Suddenly the contract, all that fine print people overlook, becomes the most powerful thing in the room. Looking at the bigger picture, 1017's history going all the way back to 2007 shows a clear pattern. Artists rise fast under Gucci Mane's platform, shine bright for a moment, and then struggle to keep that same energy, whether they stay signed or move on. Waka Flocka Flame, who came up through Gucci's early system, ended up having a very public, intense fallout with him. That situation showed just how complicated these relationships can get once business and personal ties start clashing. Rap history shows this pattern clearly. Young Thug became one of the biggest names to come out of Atlanta's trap era. But his most defining moments happened after he moved away from Gucci Mane's direct influence, not while he was under it. That pattern keeps repeating. 1017 is extremely sharp when it comes to spotting talent early. Gucci Mane has a real eye for finding artists before the rest of the industry even notices. That part cannot be denied. But the other side of it tells a different story. The contracts, the deal structures, the way everything is set up, it often puts the label in the strongest position while the artist carries most of the weight. And a lot of the artists signing are young, coming from tough situations, sometimes with records that limit their choices. And they already look up to Gucci Mane before they even sit down to sign. That kind of respect can blur judgment when it is time to talk business. It is not random, it is part of how the system works. Now fast forward, Fugio walks out of prison at 32 years old. Those key years where labels usually invest the most into an artist's growth are gone. That window does not just pause and wait. The rap scene in 2026 is completely different from what it was in 2020. Streaming platforms are pushing new names, playlists are filled with fresh faces, and the attention has shifted. Artists who were on the same level as him back then have either taken off to a whole new level or disappeared from the spotlight completely. But here is the part that still matters. He still has his voice, and he still has a story to tell. And in hip-hop, comebacks are real. Sometimes time away, combined with real-life experience, can create a different kind of impact when an artist steps back in. What an artist raps about can hit harder than any marketing push out there. But to really turn that into success, you need freedom to create, strong promotion, and a real partnership with the label behind you. And in this case, that label is Gucci Mane, the same Gucci Mane who has been all over headlines recently because of that alleged studio incident involving one of his own artists. The same one who responded publicly on a track, making it clear that the artist is still signed, the contract is still active, and business is still business no matter what happened. That message was not subtle at all. It was direct, loud, and meant for everyone watching. No matter what went down in that Dallas studio, the position stayed the same. He even compared himself to Birdman on Crash Dummy, bringing up one of the most talked about figures in music business history. That comparison connects back to the long-running contract disputes with Lil Wayne, a situation that showed just how intense these label relationships can get. And that is the point he is making clear. He is showing exactly how he views these deals. To him, the paperwork does not bend easily. Even under extreme pressure, the contract is what holds everything in place, and that stance is not changing. So now everything circles back to Foogiano, standing at a crossroads that feels bigger than just music. He is free in real life, but still tied down on paper, and that contrast is where the real tension sits. This is the moment that can define everything going forward, because coming home is one thing, but navigating a deal like this in a completely different industry landscape is something else entirely. The pressure is higher now, the expectations are louder, and every move he makes will be watched closely. If he drops music, it is not just about making hits. It is about how those records perform under a contract that still needs to be recouped. It is about whether the machine behind him pushes as hard as it used to, or if things move differently this time around. And then there is the bigger question nobody can ignore. Does he have the freedom to fully tell his story the way he wants to? Or does the business side shape how that story gets delivered to the world? Because at the end of the day, talent is only part of the equation. The real battle happens behind the scenes, in paperwork, in percentages, and in control. Foogiano's next chapter is not just about a comeback. It is about whether he can win in a system that was never designed with the artist fully in mind. And this is where things get even more serious. Because the next moves Foogiano makes are not just about music. They are about strategy. Every release, every feature, every decision now carries weight that goes beyond just sounding good. If the contract is still fully active, then timing becomes everything. Dropping too early without the right push could slow his momentum. Waiting too long could make people lose interest in a fast-moving industry that rarely waits for anyone. And then there is the label's role in all of this. Do they go all in on his comeback and invest real resources, or do they play it safe and let him carry the weight himself? That difference can decide whether this turns into a major return or just a short moment of hype. At the same time, fans are watching closely. They want authenticity. They want real stories, and Foogiano has lived through experiences most artists only talk about. That gives him an edge, but only if it is used the right way. Because in this position, it is not just about making noise, it is about making moves that last. One wrong step can stall everything, but one strong run can shift the entire narrative. Right now, everything is lined up for either a powerful comeback or a missed opportunity, and which direction it goes depends on what happens next. Foogiano is now standing in this situation alone, still locked into that deal, while the label's other biggest name sits in federal custody. And the whole industry is watching closely, waiting to see what his next move looks like. Fans are ready for a comeback. The excitement is real, but the pressure is just as heavy. That contract already took 5 years of his prime, and it is still demanding more music, more numbers, more recoupment before he can truly see real profit from his own work. And that is where the irony hits hard. He walked out of prison into freedom, but stepped right back into a system that can feel just as restrictive in a different way. A contract built when the power was not balanced, when one side had the leverage and the other had belief, hunger, and not much room to negotiate. Now everything comes down to what he does next. Does he turn this into a comeback story, or does the system keep holding him in place? If you made it this far, hit that like button, subscribe for more breakdowns like this, share this with someone who needs to see it, and drop your thoughts in the comments.